There are songs meant to fill silence and songs meant to hide what happens in the dark. Sofia Ricci played both. Her fingers knew every key in Stella di Notte, every note that could drown out whispered deals and dangerous men. But the night Dante Moretti's wineglass caught poison, no melody could silence what she'd seen. So she did something reckless. She wrote him a warning on sheet music and watched his world catch fire. Some performances end in applause. This one would end in blood, protection, and a man who'd never let her go. Welcome back to Mafia Folklore. Before this story begins, tell me something. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? It helps us know how far the legend of the Mafia travels tonight. Drop it in the comments below. We love seeing where our stories find you. Now, let's begin. Sofia Ricci's fingers had memorized 300 songs, but they still trembled over the keys, not from nerves, from exhaustion, from the weight of numbers that climbed higher every month. Rent, utilities, her father's medical debt that refused to die even after he had. The kind of debt that came with phone calls at midnight and men who showed up at your door with smiles that promised broken bones. She needed this job. Desperately. Stella di Notte paid her in cash every Friday, $300 for 5 nights of background music that no one listened to. She played from 8 until midnight in the corner of the dining room, her baby grand piano positioned where the light was softest and the acoustics richest. Chopin, Debussy, Satie. Occasionally something Italian when the owner requested it, something that made the old men at the bar close their eyes and remember cities they'd left behind. Her fingers moved across the keys now, pulling Clair de Lune from muscle memory while her mind did what it always did, counted. Counted the tips she'd need to cover next week's debt payment. Counted the tables that had filled since she'd started playing. Counted the exits, one through the kitchen, one through the main entrance, one service door near the restrooms that she'd marked the first night she'd worked here, because desperate people always know where the exits are. And she noticed things. It was a side effect of desperation. Hyper-awareness. When you lived one missed payment away from violence, you learned to read rooms, to sense shifts in atmosphere the way animals sense storms coming. Tonight, the atmosphere in Stella di Notte was wrong. The restaurant itself was beautiful. All warm amber light and dark wood, white tablecloths and wine bottles that cost more than she made in a month. Crystal chandeliers, artwork on the walls that was probably real. The kind of place where reservation lists ran 6 weeks deep, and the owner greeted certain guests by kissing both their cheeks. But the clientele? They were the reason Sofia kept her head down and her music soft. She'd played in hotel lobbies, wedding receptions, retirement homes. Those audiences smiled at her, requested songs, tipped her with genuine warmth. The men who dined at Stella di Notte didn't smile. They assessed. They moved like predators who'd forgotten what it felt like to be prey. Their conversations were conducted in low voices, hands gesturing over wine glasses, eyes constantly scanning. Sofia had learned not to listen, not to look too long, not to remember faces or names. But tonight, she couldn't help but notice Table 9. The private alcove in the back, separated from the main dining room by velvet curtains the color of dried blood. 6 men sat around the table, but only one of them mattered. Dante Moretti. She'd heard his name whispered in the kitchen, seen the way the owner's hands shook slightly when he personally inspected the meal being prepared. She'd played here for 3 months and had never seen Dante arrive without every staff member standing a little straighter, moving a little faster. From her piano, she could see him through the gap in the curtains. He sat at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A face carved from stone and shadow. Sharp jawline, strong nose, and eyes so dark they looked black from this distance. He wasn't the biggest man at the table, wasn't the loudest, but gravity itself seemed to bend around him. Power. That's what he radiated. The kind that didn't need to be announced. Sophia's fingers moved into Debussy's arabesque, something light and flowing that contrasted sharply with the tension she felt crawling up her spine. Because something was wrong at table 9. She couldn't name it, couldn't point to a single detail. But she'd spent 2 years reading rooms for danger, and every instinct she possessed was screaming. The 5 men with Dante seemed off. Their laughter came too quickly. Their glances toward him lasted a heartbeat too long. One of them, the one with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, kept checking his watch, waiting for something. Sophia's hands faltered on the keys for half a second before she caught herself. She adjusted, transitioning into something slower, watching through her peripheral vision as a waiter emerged from the kitchen carrying a single bottle of wine. Expensive, vintage. She'd seen the owner handle those bottles like they were made of spun glass. The waiter approached table 9, but instead of pouring, he set the bottle down and retreated quickly. Too quickly. The scarred man reached for it immediately, pulling the cork with practiced ease. He began pouring, 1 glass, 2, 3, working his way around the table. Sophia's fingers continued their progression through the melody, but her attention was locked on that alcove. The scarred man leaned close to the man beside him, whispering something, their heads bent together, shoulders angled away from Dante. And then she saw it, a small vial, no bigger than her thumb, appearing in the scarred man's palm. He uncorked it with one hand, while his other held the wine bottle. Clear liquid, barely 3 drops, tipped into the glass sitting directly in front of Dante's empty seat. It disappeared into the wine like it had never existed. Sophia's hands slammed down on the wrong keys. The discordant sound cut through the restaurant like a knife. Several heads turned. She felt heat flood her face, forced her fingers back into the correct position, stammered through the next few measures while her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. Poison. She'd just watched someone poison Dante Moretti's wine. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to keep playing, to look away, to forget what she'd seen. This wasn't her business. This wasn't her world. Getting involved meant attention, questions, danger. All the things that would destroy the fragile peace she'd built. But she couldn't. Because despite the debt, despite the fear, despite every reason to stay quiet, Sofia Ricci couldn't watch someone die. Not even a man like Dante Moretti. Her fingers moved on autopilot through the final phrases of the piece. The sheet music sat in front of her on the stand. Pages and pages of notes she didn't need anymore. Her hand reached for the pencil she kept tucked beside the music, the one she used to mark difficult passages, to scribble reminders. She flipped to a blank page at the back of her book. Your men poisoned you. The wine. 5 words. Scratched in handwriting that shook so badly she could barely read it herself. Sofia tore the page free, folded it twice, and stood from the piano bench. Her legs felt disconnected from her body as she crossed the dining room. She'd never approached table 9 before, never had a reason to. Musicians didn't interact with guests. They were background, atmosphere, meant to be heard, but not seen. But Dante's table was closest to the bar, and the path took her right past the alcove entrance. The scarred man glanced up as she approached. His eyes slid over her, dismissive. A pianist. Irrelevant. Sophia's hand trembled as she passed the gap in the curtains, and in one fluid motion, desperate and reckless and stupid, she let the folded paper slip from her fingers onto the floor directly beside Dante's chair. Then she kept walking. Toward the bar, toward anywhere that wasn't there. She made it 3 steps before she heard his voice. Stop. Low, measured, the kind of voice that made a command sound like a whisper. Sophia froze. Come here. She turned slowly, her heart attempting escape through her throat. Dante Moretti was looking directly at her. The folded paper sat in his palm, partially opened. His eyes, dark, sharp, reading her like she was sheet music, held hers for one eternal second. Then his hand moved. Fast. Deliberate. He caught her wrist and pulled her forward, spinning her so that she fell, not roughly, but undeniably, onto his lap. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Have you ever seen something you weren't supposed to? Something that made you choose between safety and doing what's right? Tell us in the comments. Sophia's world narrowed to 3 things. The solid weight of Dante's thigh beneath her, the iron grip on her wrist, and the 5 pairs of eyes now locked onto her like crosshairs. Smile, Dante murmured against her ear, his voice barely a breath. They're watching. Her face felt frozen. Her lungs had forgotten how to work, but somehow, some survival instinct buried deeper than fear. Her lips curved upward. A trembling, uncertain thing that probably looked more like a grimace, but it was something. Dante's free hand moved to her waist, settling there with casual possession. To anyone watching, it looked like exactly what it was supposed to look like. A powerful man indulging in a moment of distraction, pulling a pretty pianist onto his lap on a whim. The scarred man laughed first, a sound like gravel scraping concrete. Boss, didn't know you had a thing for musicians. I have a thing for beautiful women, Dante replied smoothly, his tone carrying just enough amusement to sell the performance. And she plays Debussy. That takes talent. More laughter around the table, forced, tight, but laughter nonetheless. Sophia felt Dante's thumb trace a small circle against her hip. Once, twice, and somehow she understood it was meant to be steadying. Breathe, play along. Pour the wine, Luca, Dante said, nodding toward the scarred man. Let's toast to unexpected pleasures. Luca's smile didn't reach his eyes, but he reached for the bottle. Sophia watched, trapped in this surreal tableau, as he filled the glasses one by one, working his way around the table. Dante's poisoned glass sat directly in front of them. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought everyone must hear it. What was he doing? He'd read her note. She'd seen him read it. But now he was just sitting here, holding her, acting like nothing was wrong while death waited in crystal and wine. To the family, Lucas said, raising his glass. The others followed suit, including the man to Dante's left, the one who'd been whispering with Luca earlier. Dante's hand left her waist. Sophia watched, frozen, as he reached for his glass. No, but his fingers didn't close around the poisoned one. Instead, in a movement so smooth it looked choreographed, his hand swept past it and picked up the glass belonging to the man on his right, a quiet, nervous-looking man who'd barely spoken all evening. Actually, Dante said, his voice carrying that same easy authority, I prefer this vintage at room temperature. Marco? He gestured to the nervous man. Trade with me. Yours has been breathing longer. Marco blinked, confused, but nodded quickly. Of course, boss. The glasses switched positions. Sofia's breath caught as she understood. Dante had just moved the poisoned wine away from himself, but he'd done it so casually, so naturally, that no one questioned it. To the family, Dante repeated, lifting Marco's glass. The toast echoed around the table. 6 men drank. Dante brought the glass to his lips but didn't swallow. Sofia could feel the way his throat didn't move, the way he simply let wine touch his mouth before lowering the glass again. Sofia, he said suddenly, turning his attention to her. His eyes were dark storms, unreadable. That's your name, isn't it? I've heard you play before. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Play something for us, he continued, his hand returning to her waist. Something passionate, while we enjoy our wine. It wasn't a request. He released her wrist, and Sofia stood on legs that felt like water. She didn't dare look at the table, didn't dare meet anyone's eyes. She simply walked back to her piano, slowly, carefully, like she was crossing a frozen lake that might crack at any moment. Her hands found the keys. Mozart's Lacrimosa poured out, haunting, tragic, the kind of music that filled a room with beautiful sorrow. And she watched. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see Dante leaning back in his chair, swirling his wine, but not drinking. The other men talked, laughed, gestured with their glasses. Luca and his companion drank deeply. 2 minutes passed. 3. Then Luca coughed. It was small at first, just a catch in his throat. He cleared it, reached for his water glass, but his hand trembled as he lifted it. The other man, the one who'd whispered with Luca, pushed back from the table suddenly, his chair scraping loud against the floor. I need... His words cut off as another cough seized him, this one violent enough to double him over. Luca stood, his face draining of color. What? He didn't finish the sentence. His legs buckled and he collapsed, hitting the floor with a sound that made Sofia's fingers slam down on the keys again. The other man followed seconds later, convulsing once before going terrifyingly still. Chaos erupted. The 3 remaining men at the table jumped up, shouting, reaching for weapons concealed in jackets. But Dante's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Sit down. 2 words, spoken quietly, but every man in that alcove froze. Dante stood slowly, adjusting his cufflinks with the same care someone might take rearranging flowers. He looked down at the 2 bodies on the floor, Luca's eyes staring at nothing, the other man's face already turning blue, with an expression of mild disappointment. Poison, he said conversationally. In my wine. How unimaginative. He turned to the 3 men still standing. Which one of you wants to explain? Or should I assume you're all involved and save time? Boss? One of them started, but Dante raised a hand. Actually, don't. I already know. His gaze swept over them, cold as winter. Luca got greedy, thought he could take my place. And you 3? He gestured lazily. You're either traitors or cowards who stood by and watched. Either way, you're done. He pulled his phone from his pocket, pressed a single button. Romano, alcove, bring the cleaning crew. Then he turned, and his eyes found Sofia across the restaurant. She was still playing. Mozart had given way to something else, something her hands had chosen without her conscious mind, filling the terrible silence with sound that felt like prayer. Dante walked toward her. Not quickly, not with anger or violence in his movements. Just walked, like a man crossing a room to speak with an old friend. The other diners had noticed the commotion by now. Whispers rippled through the restaurant. But no one moved. No one called the police. Because at Stella di Notte, certain things were understood. Dante stopped beside the piano. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. And those eyes, God, they held everything: fury, calculation, and something else. Something that looked almost like curiosity. "You," he said softly, "just saved my life." Sofia's hands stilled on the keys. The silence that followed felt louder than any music she'd ever played. "Why?" Dante asked. It wasn't accusatory, just genuinely curious. "You don't know me. You have no reason to care whether I live or die. So why risk it?" Her voice came out as a whisper. I couldn't just watch. Couldn't watch a man die. A ghost of something, amusement, respect, flickered across his face. Even a man like me? Even then. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket. Sofia flinched. Couldn't help it, but he only pulled out a card. Black, embossed with gold lettering. "You're in danger now," he said, placing the card on top of her sheet music. "Luca had friends. They'll know someone warned me. They'll come looking for who?" Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her chest. I know." His voice gentled just slightly. "Which is why you're coming with me." "What?" "You have 10 seconds to decide," Dante continued, glancing toward the entrance where 3 large men in dark suits had just appeared. "Stay here, hope Luca's people don't find you, and probably die within a week. Or come with me, accept my protection, and live." Sofia's mouth went dry. "That's not a choice." "No," Dante agreed. "It's not, but I'm giving you the illusion of one anyway." He extended his hand. "What's it going to be? Sofia?" She looked at his hand, strong, scarred across the knuckles. The hand of a man who'd built an empire on violence and power. The hand of a man she'd just saved. Behind him, men were already moving Luca's body, working with the efficient silence of people who'd done this 100 times before. In the kitchen, she could hear muffled shouts, the owner probably being informed. The other diners had their heads down, suddenly fascinated by their meals. Nobody was coming to help her. Nobody was going to save her. Nobody, except the devil himself. Sofia's hand shook as she reached out and placed it in Dante's palm. His fingers closed around hers, warm, certain, unbreakable. "Smart girl," he murmured. Then, louder, to the men by the entrance. "Bring the car around. The lady needs an escort home." He pulled her gently to her feet, his hand never leaving hers, and leaned close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. "You saved the wrong man's life tonight, Sofia," he whispered against her ear. "But I promise you, I'm going to spend every day proving I was worth saving." The car was a black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark that Sofia couldn't see inside until Dante opened the door and gestured for her to enter. She hesitated on the sidewalk, the night air cold against her skin. Behind them, Stella di Notte glowed like a jewel box, warm and inviting, as if 2 men hadn't just died on its floors, as if her entire life hadn't just shattered like dropped crystal. "Second thoughts?" Dante asked. There was no mockery in his voice, just patience. "I don't even know you," Sofia whispered. "No," he agreed. "But you know what happens if you walk away, and so do I." She looked down the street, empty except for a few parked cars and the distant glow of traffic lights. Somewhere out there was her apartment, her piano, her carefully constructed life of invisibility and survival. But Dante was right. That life had ended the moment she'd torn a page from her sheet music and dropped it beside his chair. Sofia climbed into the car. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Gun oil, maybe, though she'd never smelled gun oil before, so she couldn't be sure. Dante slid in beside her, and the driver, a man built like a wall, with kind eyes that seemed wrong for his profession, pulled away from the curb without a word. "Where are we going?" Sofia asked. "Somewhere safe." Dante's gaze was on the window, watching the city slide past. "My home. At least for tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out something more permanent. I have an apartment, which Luca's people know about by now." He turned to look at her, and even in the dim light of the car, his eyes were intense. "They'll have gone through employment records, bribed the owner, learned everything about you within an hour. Your address, your schedule, your debts." Sofia's stomach dropped. "My debts?" Something shifted in Dante's expression. Understanding? Maybe pity. "You owe money. A lot of it, if I'm reading you correctly. Medical bills, probably. Your father's?" She nodded numbly. "How did he—" "I noticed things too," Dante said, answering her unspoken question. "The way you counted tips in your head while you played, the cheap watch on your wrist next to the expensive piano, the exhaustion in your shoulders. You're drowning in something, and it's not just fear of me." Sofia didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to process that this man, this dangerous, powerful man, had seen her, really seen her, when she'd spent 2 years perfecting the art of being invisible. "How much do you owe?" he asked. It's not your problem." "How much, Sofia?" She closed her eyes. $83,000, give or take? The number hung in the air between them, obscene and impossible. "Who holds the debt?" "A collection agency. They bought it from the hospital after my father died. They call every week, send letters. Last month they sent—" She stopped, her throat tightening. "They sent someone to my apartment to remind me what happens when people don't pay." Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Give me their name." "Why?" "Because as of tonight, you're under my protection, and people under my protection don't get threatened by second-rate loan sharks." He pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen. "The debt will be gone by morning." Sofia's head snapped toward him. "What? No, I can't. That's not why I know it's not." He pocketed the phone and met her eyes. "You didn't save my life for money. You did it because you have a conscience, which is unfortunately rare in my world. But that conscience is going to get you killed if you don't let me help you." "I don't want to owe you—" "You don't owe me anything." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "You gave me my life back. The least I can do is give you yours." The car pulled through a gate that opened automatically, then down a long driveway lined with trees. At the end sat a house that was less a house and more a small mansion. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within with warm light. "This is where you live?" Sofia breathed. "One of the places." Dante opened his door, then came around to open hers, extending his hand to help her out. "Come on, you look like you're about to collapse." She was. Adrenaline had carried her this far, but now it was draining away, leaving nothing but bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. Inside, the house was beautiful in a way that felt almost warm. Dark wood floors, comfortable furniture, artwork that looked personal rather than pretentious. A fireplace crackled in the living room. Somewhere, she could smell coffee brewing. "Maria," Dante called, and a woman appeared from a hallway, older, with gray-streaked hair and a face that held both sternness and kindness. "This is Sofia. She'll be staying with us. Can you prepare the guest room?" Maria's eyes swept over Sofia, taking in the rumpled dress, the shaking hands, the wild look of someone still processing shock. Her expression softened. "Of course. I'll bring her something to eat, too. She looks half-starved." "I'm fine." Sofia started, but Maria was already gone. Dante guided her to a chair by the fireplace, and she sank into it gratefully. He disappeared for a moment, returning with 2 glasses and a bottle of something amber. "Whiskey?" he said, pouring. "You need it." Sofia took the glass with both hands to keep it from shaking. The first sip burned, but the second went down smoother. Warmth spread through her chest. Dante settled into the chair across from her. His own glass cradled loosely in one hand. He'd removed his jacket, loosened his tie. Without the armor of formal dress, he looked almost human, tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than she'd noticed before. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not letting me die out there. Thank you for warning me." He swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the light catch in the liquid. "Most people would have looked away, told themselves it wasn't their business. I thought about it. But you didn't." He looked up at her. "Why not?" Sofia was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. "My father," she finally said. "When he was sick, toward the end, there were moments when I thought it would be easier if it would just be over. The pain, the bills, all of it. And I hated myself for thinking it." She met Dante's gaze. "But I never stopped fighting for him. Never stopped trying to save him. Even when it was hopeless. Because that's what you do when someone's life is in your hands. You fight." "Even for strangers?" "Even for strangers." Dante studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. "You're going to ruin me," he said softly. "What?" He shook his head, taking a drink. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." Maria returned with a tray. Soup, bread, cheese, fruit. Sofia hadn't realized how hungry she was until the smell hit her. She ate while Dante watched the fire, and the silence between them felt less like discomfort and more like companionship. "Can I ask you something?" Sofia said eventually. "Anything." "What you do, the people at that restaurant, the way everyone acts around you." She hesitated. Are you what people say you are?" Dante's smile was sad. "What do people say I am?" "Dangerous, powerful, a man who built his empire on blood." "Then yes," he said simply. "I am exactly what people say I am." Sofia should have been terrified, should have put down the soup and run for the door. But something in his voice, resignation, maybe weariness, made her pause. "Do you want to be?" she asked. The question seemed to catch him off guard. His eyes snapped to hers, sharp and searching. "Want to be? What you are, who you are, or did circumstances make you this way?" For a long moment, Dante didn't speak. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. "I was 16, he finally said, his voice quiet. "When my father was killed. Shot in the street like a dog while my mother and I watched from the car." "The men who did it, they worked for him, his own people? Because he'd gotten soft," they said. Started caring more about family than business. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. I learned two things that night. Trust is a luxury that gets you killed, and power is the only thing that keeps the people you love safe. Do you still believe that? I did, until about 3 hours ago. He looked at her. Until a pianist I'd never spoken to risked her life to save mine, for no reason except that she thought it was right. Sofia's chest tightened. I'm not special, Dante. You are, though. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the intensity in his gaze pinned her in place. You're the first person in 20 years who's looked at me and seen someone worth saving. Not a monster. Not a means to an end. Just a man. You are just a man, Sofia whispered. No. His smile was bitter. I stopped being just a man a long time ago, but tonight, sitting here with you. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. Tonight I remember what it felt like. Before all of this. Maria appeared in the doorway. The room is ready whenever she is. Dante stood, offering Sofia his hand again. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. She swayed slightly, exhaustion and whiskey, and the weight of everything that had happened. Easy, Dante murmured, his hand moving to her elbow to steady her. You're safe here, I promise. Sofia looked up at him, this man who'd killed tonight without hesitation, who ruled an empire built on fear, who held her arm like she was something precious and breakable. Why do I believe you? She asked. Because I've never broken a promise in my life. He guided her toward the stairs. And I'm not about to start with you. At the door to the guest room, Sofia paused. Dante? Yes? What happens tomorrow? His hand came up, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face, but he stopped just short, his fingers curling into his palm. Tomorrow, we figure out how to keep you alive. And after that, something fierce entered his expression. After that, I'm going to find everyone who ever threatened you and make sure they understand what it means to touch something of mine. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened her. Instead, it sent warmth cascading through her chest, dangerous and intoxicating. I'm not yours, she said softly, but even she could hear the question in it. Dante's smile was slow, dark, full of promise. Not yet, Sofia, but you will be. He left her standing in the doorway, watching as he disappeared down the hallway toward his own room. Sofia closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing for entirely new reasons. Have you ever felt safe with someone you barely know? When did you realize that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right one? Share your story in the comments. Sofia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from somewhere below. For one disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, the poison, the bodies, Dante's hand closing around hers. You're coming with me. She sat up, her dress from last night wrinkled beyond redemption. Someone, Maria probably, had left clothes folded on a chair by the door. Jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments still in packaging, all in her size. Sofia tried not to think about how Dante had known. She showered quickly, dressed, and followed the scent of coffee downstairs. The house looked different in daylight. Less imposing, more lived in. There were photos on the walls she hadn't noticed last night. A younger Dante with an older couple who had to be his parents, a beach somewhere warm, a dog that looked like it had been part wolf. Voices came from the kitchen. She paused in the doorway. Dante stood by the counter, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He'd traded last night's suit for dark jeans and a white shirt rolled up at the sleeves. The morning light caught on his forearms, scarred, she noticed, thin white lines that spoke of old violence. He looked up, saw her, and something in his expression softened. He said something final into the phone and hung up. "Coffee?" he offered, already reaching for a mug. "Please." He poured, added cream without asking, somehow knowing she took it light, and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them pulled away immediately. "How did you sleep?" Dante asked. "Better than I expected." Sofia took a sip, let the warmth ground her. "Did you sleep at all?" "Some." A lie, judging by the shadows under his eyes. "I had calls to make. Your debt, it's been settled. The collection agency won't be bothering you again." Sofia's hand tightened on the mug. "Dante, I can't." "It's done, Sofia. Let it be done." Before she could argue, Maria bustled in with a plate of pastries and fruit. "Eat," she commanded, the same way she probably had when Dante was young. "Both of you. You look like ghosts." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Then Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something dark crossed his face. "What is it?" Sofia asked. "Romano." Dante answered the call, listened, his jaw tightening with every second. "When? How many?" "No, don't engage. Pull back and wait for my orders." He hung up, stood abruptly. The easy warmth from a moment ago had vanished, replaced by the cold authority she'd seen at the restaurant. "What's wrong?" Sofia's voice came out smaller than she intended. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his hands braced on the counter. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. "Luca had more allies than I thought. They hit one of my businesses this morning, set fire to a warehouse on the docks." "Oh my God." "No one was hurt," he said quickly. "But it's a message. They know I'm vulnerable right now. They're testing me." "Because of me?" The realization hit like ice water. "Because you protected me instead of—" "No." He turned to face her, his gaze fierce. "This isn't because of you. This is because Luca was a traitor, and traitors always have backup plans. It would have happened whether you'd warned me or not." But Sofia could see the calculation in his eyes, the way his mind was already 3 steps ahead, weighing options and costs. "You're going to leave," she said, not a question. "I have to handle this, now, before it spreads." He moved toward her, his hand coming up to cup her face, gentle despite the violence simmering beneath his skin. "You'll stay here. Maria will be with you, and I'm leaving 3 of my best men outside. You'll be safe." Sofia wanted to believe him. Wanted to lean into his touch and trust that everything would be fine. But she'd learned a long time ago that safety was an illusion. "How long will you be gone?" "A few hours, maybe less." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I'll be back before dark, I promise." He left in a blur of motion, grabbing a jacket, issuing quiet orders to the men waiting by the door. Sofia watched from the window as the Mercedes pulled away, taking him back to the world of violence and power where he belonged. And she was left in a beautiful house that felt suddenly very empty. The hours crawled past. Maria tried to distract her, teaching her how to make fresh pasta, showing her the garden behind the house, chatting about everything and nothing. But Sofia couldn't shake the knot of anxiety in her stomach. She kept thinking about the way Dante had looked at her this morning, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. But she'd also seen the other look, the one that crossed his face when Romano called. The look that said he was weighing her safety against his empire, her life against his power. And Sofia didn't know which would win. At 3 o'clock, her phone rang. She'd almost forgotten she still had it, pulled from her apartment by one of Dante's men that morning, along with some clothes and her sheet music. The screen showed an unknown number. She shouldn't have answered. Should have ignored it, let it go to voicemail. But desperation and fear made people stupid. Hello? Sofia Ricci. The voice was male, smooth, unfamiliar. We haven't met, but we have a mutual friend. Had a mutual friend, I should say. Luca spoke very highly of you in the hours before he died. Her blood turned to ice. Who is this? Someone who's trying to help you. Someone who understands that you're in over your head with a very dangerous man. I'm hanging up. Dante Moretti killed 3 men last night, 3 of his own people. And for what? To protect a pianist he'd never spoken to? That doesn't sound like the Dante I know. Which makes me wonder, what did you do to make yourself so valuable? Sofia's hand shook. I didn't do anything. I don't know anything. That's what makes this so tragic. The voice took on a false sympathy that made her skin crawl. You're collateral damage, Sofia. A pretty face that got caught in the crossfire. And when Dante realizes you're more trouble than you're worth, and he will realize that, very soon, he'll dispose of you, like he disposes of everything that becomes inconvenient. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself, what does a man like Dante Moretti want with someone like you? What happens when the threat passes and you're just another mouth to feed, another weakness to protect? A pause. I can offer you something better. Safety. Money. A way out of this world before it swallows you whole. I don't want anything from you. Then you're a fool, and fools don't last long in our world. The line went dead. Sofia stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart slamming against her ribs. Maria appeared in the doorway. Everything all right, dear? Fine, Sofia lied. Just a wrong number. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dante returned as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Sofia heard the car before she saw it, heard the heavy footsteps on the porch. Then the door opened and he was there, alive, whole, but different. There was blood on his knuckles. His shirt was torn at the collar, and his eyes looked like they'd seen something that couldn't be unseen. Dante. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Not gently, desperately, like she was an anchor and he was drowning. Sofia felt his heart hammering against her cheek, felt the tremor in his hands as they pressed against her back. Are you hurt? She whispered. No. His voice was rough. But I could have been. We all could have been. They had more men than Romano reported. Better weapons. Better planning. He pulled back just enough to look at her. And the vulnerability in his face stole her breath. I almost didn't make it back. But you did. Because I had to. His hands came up to frame her face. Because you were here, waiting, and I couldn't let them take that from me. Sofia saw it then, the truth he was trying not to say. She wasn't just someone he was protecting. She'd become something more, something that made him reckless, made him human, made him weak. This isn't going to stop, is it? She asked. The attacks, the danger, they're going to keep coming because of me. Not because of you. Yes, because of me. She pulled away from his touch, and the loss of contact felt like tearing. That phone call today? One of Luca's people? They said I was making you vulnerable, that you'd realize I was more trouble than I was worth. Dante's expression went cold. They called you? It doesn't matter what they said. What matters is, they're right, aren't they? I'm a liability. Every moment you spend protecting me is a moment you can't spend protecting your empire. My empire can burn, Dante said flatly. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. He stepped closer, and the intensity radiating from him was almost frightening. I have spent 20 years building something I thought mattered. Power, control, respect bought with fear and blood. And it's empty, Sofia. All of it. I've been alone in a kingdom of ghosts, pretending that was enough. His voice cracked slightly. Then you walked into my life and reminded me what it feels like to care about something real. Dante, I know what I am, he continued. I know what I've done. The violence, the darkness, it's all true. But with you, he reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. With you, I remember there's something worth being better for. Tears burned Sofia's eyes. What if being better isn't enough? What if they keep coming, and one day you have to choose between me and everything you've built? Then I choose you. No hesitation. No doubt. Every time, Sofia, I choose you. The words hung between them, enormous and terrifying, and impossibly beautiful. You barely know me, Sofia whispered. I know enough. His free hand came up to brush away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I know you risked everything to save a stranger. I know you fight for people, even when it's hopeless. I know you see me, really see me, and you're still standing here. He leaned his forehead against hers. That's all I need to know. Sofia's breath hitched. I'm scared. So am I. Of what? Of this. He pulled back to meet her eyes. Of wanting something so much it could destroy me. Of finally having something worth losing. They stood there, suspended in the fading light. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances, and somehow made it feel like fate. Then Sofia's phone rang again. She pulled it from her pocket with shaking hands. Unknown number. Again. Dante's jaw clenched. Don't answer it. But Sofia knew with the certainty of someone who'd spent 2 years reading danger, that ignoring this call would be worse. She answered, put it on speaker. Sofia, the same smooth voice from before. I hope you've had time to reconsider my offer. She's not interested, Dante said, his voice deadly calm. A pause. Then, Dante, I wondered if you were listening. Tell me, have you told her yet? About what you really do? About the girl last year who got too close and ended up at the bottom of the harbor? Sofia's blood went cold. She looked at Dante, searching his face for denial. She found none, only pain. That's different, Dante said quietly. She was, what? A spy? A traitor? Does it matter? She trusted you, and you killed her. The voice was poison wrapped in silk. How long before Sofia becomes inconvenient too? Never, Dante growled. She's not what? Not a liability? Not a weakness? Open your eyes, Dante. She's both, and you know what you do with weaknesses. The line went dead. Silence filled the room like smoke. Sofia took a step back, then another. Is it true? Sofia, is it true? Dante's shoulders sagged. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. Yes, there was a girl. She was working for a rival family, feeding them information. When I found out, he stopped, his hands curling into fists. I did what I had to do. What I've always done. I eliminated the threat, You killed her. Yes. Sofia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. And you said I was safe with you, that you'd protect me. But how do I know? Her voice broke. How do I know I won't become a threat too? Because I love you. The words fell like stones into water. Sofia stared at him. What? I love you, Dante repeated, and now his voice was raw, stripped of every defense. I've known you for less than 24 hours, and I love you in a way I didn't think I was capable of anymore. That girl, I felt nothing when I killed her. Nothing but cold calculation. But you? He took a shaky breath. The thought of anything happening to you makes me want to burn the world down. Not because you're useful, not because you're convenient, because you're you. And I would rather die than hurt you. Tears streamed down Sofia's face. How can I believe that? Because I'm telling you the truth, even though it might make you leave. Because I'm giving you the choice I never gave her. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. I'm a monster, Sofia. I've done terrible things, and I'll probably do more. But I swear to you, I swear on everything I am, you will never be one of them. Sofia looked at his outstretched hand, at the scars on his knuckles, at the blood still dried beneath his fingernails. She thought about the phone call, the warnings, the very real danger that came with loving a man like Dante Moretti. And she thought about the way he'd held her this morning, the gentleness in his touch, the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd said, I almost didn't make it back. Sometimes the most dangerous choice was the only one worth making. Sofia placed her hand in his. Don't make me regret this, she whispered. Dante pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I won't. I swear to God, Sofia, I won't. Outside, night fell completely, and somewhere in the darkness, enemies circled, waiting for their moment to strike. But in that moment, holding each other in the ruins of secrets and blood, Sofia and Dante had something worth fighting for. Each other. The attack came 3 days later. 3 days of Sofia learning to live in Dante's world. Armed guards at every door, phones that were swept for bugs twice daily. A life lived in the spaces between violence. 3 days of stolen moments. Dante teaching her to drink espresso the way his mother had made it. Sofia playing piano in his study while he worked. Conversations that stretched past midnight about everything and nothing. 3 days of falling deeper into something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She was in the garden when the first gunshot cracked the afternoon silence. Sofia's blood turned to ice. She dropped the book she'd been reading and ran toward the house, but strong hands caught her halfway across the lawn. Down! Romano, Dante's head of security, pulled her behind a stone planter as more shots rang out. Stay low! I'm getting you inside! Where's Dante? Sofia's heart was trying to punch through her chest. Handling it. Come on! They made it to the kitchen door before it burst open. Dante appeared, gun in hand, his eyes wild until they landed on her. Relief and fury warred across his face. Get her to the safe room, he barked at Romano. Now! No! Sofia started, but Dante was already moving past them toward the front of the house where the sounds of fighting had intensified. Romano half dragged, half carried her through the house and down a hallway she'd never noticed before. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a reinforced door. Inside, he commanded. Don't open this for anyone except Dante or me, understand? Sofia nodded, her throat too tight for words. The door sealed behind her with a pneumatic hiss. The room was small but comfortable. A couch, supplies, monitors showing security feeds from around the property. She watched the screens in horror as men in tactical gear swarmed the grounds, exchanging fire with Dante's security team. And there, on the center screen, Dante moved through the chaos like something out of a nightmare. Every movement precise, lethal, efficient. She'd known intellectually what he was capable of, but seeing it, watching him fight with the cold certainty of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before, it should have terrified her. Instead, all she felt was a desperate, consuming need for him to survive. Minutes dragged past like hours. The gunfire intensified, then gradually faded. Sofia watched as the last of the attackers were subdued or retreated. Dante appeared on one of the screens, speaking rapid fire into a phone, blood streaking his temple. Then the monitors went dark. Sofia's heart stopped. Before panic could fully set in, she heard it. 3 knocks, a pause, 2 more knocks. The code Dante had taught her the first night. She opened the door. Dante stood there, looking like he'd walked through hell. Blood, some his, most not, splattered his clothes. His knuckles were split. A cut above his eye was still bleeding. But he was alive. Whole. Sofia! She threw herself into his arms, not caring about the blood or the danger or anything except the fact that he was breathing. I thought... Her voice broke. When the screens went dark, I thought... I'm here. His arms came around her, crushing her against him. I'm here. I'm okay. You're bleeding? It's nothing. He pulled back, his hands frantically checking her over. Are you hurt? Did anyone get past Romano? I'm fine. But Dante, what? They're gone. His voice was rough. Dead or running. It's over. Sofia searched his face. Is it really over? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand and led her through the house, past the broken windows, the bullet holes in the walls, the evidence of violence that had come so close to destroying everything. They ended up in his study, and he closed the door, sealing them away from the chaos being cleaned up outside. I need to tell you something, Dante said, his back to her. And after I do, you need to make a choice. Sofia's stomach twisted. What choice? He turned to face her, and she'd never seen him look so exhausted, so human. I've been building something, for months now, before I ever met you. An exit strategy. Exit from what? This life. He gestured vaguely. The violence, the empire, all of it. I've been moving money, setting up legitimate businesses, creating distance between myself and the family operations. It was supposed to take another year, maybe 2. But after tonight, his jaw clenched. After tonight, I'm done waiting. Sofia's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm getting out, turning control over to my cousin Alessandro. He's been waiting for this chance for years. I'll still have enough to live comfortably, safely. But I won't be a target anymore. Won't be the man with a knife at his throat every moment. He crossed to her, took both her hands in his. But I can't ask you to wait while I dismantle everything. Can't ask you to live in this danger for another month, another week. So here's your choice. I can set you up somewhere safe. New city, new identity, enough money to never worry again. You walk away clean, and you never have to see me or this world again. Or, Sofia whispered, though she already knew, or you stay. You trust me enough to weather whatever comes next. You let me prove that I can be the man you deserve, not the monster who's hurt so many people, but someone better, someone worthy of the second chance you gave me. His voice cracked. But I need you to understand what you'd be choosing. It won't be easy. There will be danger until the transition is complete. People will question why I'm leaving. Some will see it as weakness, will try to exploit it. Why are you doing this? Sofia asked. Really? Is it because of what happened tonight, or because of you? He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because 3 days ago, I was half dead inside and I didn't even know it. Because you looked at me and saw someone worth saving, and I realized I wanted to be that person. Not for power or legacy or any of the things I've spent 20 years chasing. Just to be worthy of the way you see me. Tears burned Sofia's eyes. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. I know. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But you asked me once what I wanted to be when I wasn't being this, and the answer is simple. I want to be yours. The words settled over her like a blanket, warm and terrifying and perfect. Sofia thought about the phone call 3 days ago, the warnings, the very real truth that loving Dante Moretti came with a price written in blood and fear. But she also thought about the way he held her when he thought she was sleeping, the way he listened when she played piano, the way he'd looked at her tonight like she was the only thing in the world worth surviving for. I want to show you something, Sofia said. She led him to the piano in the corner of his study, the one he'd told her had belonged to his mother. Her fingers found the keys, and she began to play. Not Chopin or Debussy this time. Something simpler. A melody her father had taught her when she was young, before the sickness, before the debt. A song about hope and second chances and finding home in unexpected places. Dante sank into the chair beside the piano, watching her hands move across the keys. When she finished, the silence felt sacred. My father told me, Sofia said softly, that the most beautiful music comes from broken instruments that learn to sing again. She turned to face him. You're not broken beyond repair, Dante. You're just learning a new song? Will you teach me? He asked, and the vulnerability in those 3 words nearly broke her. Yes. Sofia stood, crossed to him, and cupped his face in her hands, heedless of the blood, the violence, the darkness that would always be part of his past. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't look back, won't second-guess this, because I'm choosing you, Dante Moretti. I'm choosing this, us, even knowing how hard it will be. But I need to know you're choosing it too. I already have. He pulled her down into his lap, the same way he had that first night at the restaurant. But everything was different now. The moment you slipped me that note, I was already yours. I just didn't know it yet. Sofia kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. He tasted like smoke and copper and something indefinably him. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, like he could make them one person if he just held tight enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he murmured. I know it's too soon, too fast, too everything, but I love you, Sofia Ricci. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I was worth saving. You already have, Sofia whispered back. The man who pulled me onto his lap that night, he was worth saving. The man who paid my debts without asking for anything in return, worth saving. The man who's willing to walk away from power for a chance at something real. She kissed him again, softer this time. Definitely worth saving. 6 months later, the coffee shop was small, tucked into a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew their names or their history. Sofia wiped down tables while Dante worked the espresso machine, his movements still precise, but now dedicated to something harmless. Beautiful, even. They'd bought the place with money from Dante's legitimate investments, the ones he'd been building for years in preparation for exactly this. A life where the most dangerous thing they faced was running out of oat milk during the morning rush. Alessandro had taken over the family operations cleanly, with Dante's blessing and the understanding that his cousin owed him nothing. Most of the old guard had been skeptical at first, but Dante's reputation was such that even his retirement commanded respect. There had been threats, of course, a few attempts to drag him back in. But each time, Dante had stood firm. He'd chosen a different life, chosen her. The bell above the door chimed, and Sofia looked up to see a young woman enter, nervous, clutching a resume like a lifeline. "I'm here about the pianist position," the girl said hesitantly. "The ad said you were looking for someone to play during evening hours?" Sofia smiled, thinking about the small stage they'd set up in the corner. About music filling this space the way it had filled Stella di Notte that first night. "Have a seat," she said warmly. "Can I get you some coffee while we talk?" Dante caught her eye from behind the counter, and the look he gave her was pure sunshine, warm and real, and more valuable than any empire he'd ever built. This was their kingdom now, small and safe, and filled with second chances. And as Sofia poured coffee and talked to the nervous pianist about songs that heal broken things, she thought about that night 6 months ago, about a note scrawled on sheet music, about a man who'd looked at her and whispered, "You saved the wrong man's life." Maybe she had, or maybe, just maybe, they'd saved each other. Do you believe people can change? Can love be enough to pull someone out of darkness? Share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing your stories of redemption, second chances, and unexpected love. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and click on the next video. It is darker, deeper, and even more unforgettable. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and comment your country or city. Your support helps us create more contents like this.